When someone envies you, they won't always show it with anger. Most of the time, they'll stay silent. They'll smile when you succeed, but their eyes won't. They'll offer advice, but it's really a warning cloaked in doubt. Jealousy doesn't shout, it whispers. It hides behind concern, quiet comparisons, and subtle sabotage. And the more you rise, the more exposed their insecurities become. Epictetus once said, "It is not he who reviles or strikes you who insults you, but your opinion that these things are insulting." A Stoic sees through appearances, so in this video, we'll uncover 7 subtle signs that someone is secretly jealous of you. And more importantly, how to respond without losing your peace. No confrontation, no bitterness, just awareness, detachment, and inner strength. If you're ready to see clearly and protect your growth, like this video and subscribe for more Stoic tools that keep your mind sharp and your spirit calm. Let's begin.
Number 1.
They can't celebrate you. One of the clearest signs of jealousy isn't an insult, it's quiet withdrawal. When someone truly supports you, they reflect your joy. They celebrate with you, not out of obligation, but because your growth energizes them. Your success reminds them what's possible, but someone who secretly envies you will shrink in those moments. They won't respond with congratulations. They'll respond with silence. They'll offer a forced smile, a flat "good for you," or worse, they'll vanish. Not because you hurt them, but because your progress makes them feel left behind. The Stoics teach us to notice these subtle shifts. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The things you think about determine the quality of your mind. When you think clearly, you realize their silence isn't neutral. It's revealing. Their discomfort around your growth says more than any words ever could. They're not angry at you. They're unsettled by their own reflection in your rise. Here's what's happening beneath the surface. Your improvement becomes a mirror they didn't ask for, a mirror they avoid. Your discipline, your risk-taking, your courage, it all shows them where they've stood still, and instead of seeing it as inspiration, they interpret it as judgment. Not because you judge them, but because they've judged themselves. That is the sting of envy. It doesn't need your words. It creates its own narrative in the silence. Epictetus reminds us, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Growth will confuse people. It will distance people, and that's okay. Not everyone will rise with you. But if they can't clap when you win, don't expect them to stand by you when you struggle. People who disappear at your peak often weren't grounded in respect, but in comparison slowly turns affection into resentment. Jealousy doesn't always destroy with open fire. Sometimes it erodes slowly, through silence, subtle withdrawal, and withheld celebration. This is where the emotional danger lies. You start hiding your wins, you water down your excitement, you try not to make it a big deal, but that's not kindness, that's emotional self-erasure. And the more you do it, the more you teach yourself to stay small. For what? To preserve someone else's comfort. Seneca warned, "He who seeks wisdom must be free from the bondage of public opinion." Your goal isn't to be liked, it's to be aligned with virtue, with progress, with truth. And anyone who makes your light feel like a threat is not walking in truth. They're walking in fear. And fear often masquerades as indifference. But it's deeply reactive, always scanning for signs that you're becoming more than they can tolerate. They may not say it, but their silence screams, "Stay small so I can stay comfortable." Consider James Baldwin. As his voice gained power, some peers who once supported him turned silent. His honesty stirred discomfort, but Baldwin didn't flinch. He wrote louder, he stood firmer. That is Stoic strength, not in tone, but in clarity, to keep going when applause stops, to honor the truth more than the tribe, to walk through the cold with a calm soul. So what should you do when someone can't celebrate you? Don't confront, don't chase, just note it. Let it clarify what was once hidden. Let it reveal the nature of the connection, and keep moving. Share less, shine quietly. Let your work speak. Because the truth is simple. If someone only stands beside the version of you that doesn't shine, they were never really standing beside you at all. Let their silence confirm your path, and keep rising, with grace, with focus, and with no need for applause.
Number 2.
They advise to diminish. Not all jealousy shows up as silence. Sometimes it disguises itself as guidance. The jealous person won't oppose you directly. They'll offer advice, but listen closely. Their advice isn't designed to build you. It's meant to shrink you, just enough to keep you from getting ahead. It sounds like concern, but it tastes like doubt. Are you sure that's a good idea? Don't get too carried away. Not everyone makes it doing that. These are not words of encouragement. They are subtle restraints, disguised as wisdom. The Stoics understood that intentions matter, but clarity matters more. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The object of life is not to be on the side of the majority, but to escape finding oneself in the ranks of the insane." Most people follow the herd, and when you begin to lead, those stuck in the crowd often try to pull you back, not because they understand the path, but because they fear what it says about theirs. Here's what happens. When you start moving in a direction that's unfamiliar, bold, or different from what others around you have chosen, it unsettles them. They begin to offer suggestions, not based on wisdom, but based on fear. And instead of saying, "I'm afraid for you," they say, "I'm advising you." But the truth is, they're not speaking from experience. They're speaking from hesitation. And their goal, whether they admit it or not, is to slow you down enough so they can feel like they're still in the lead. Jealousy is rarely loud. It speaks in whispers. It dresses itself in care. But deep down, it aims to pull you inward, toward hesitation, toward second-guessing. This is how envy disarms the ambitious. It cloaks itself in wisdom, but leads only to inaction. Epictetus warned, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." A jealous advisor assumes authority not because they've done it, but because they don't want you to. And if you're not careful, their doubts become your inner voice. You start walking slower. You hesitate to act. You second-guess your intuition, not because your plan changed, but because someone else planted seeds of hesitation in your soil. This is why Stoics emphasize self-trust, not arrogance, but internal grounding. Seneca said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." So even if your path is difficult, even if it's misunderstood, don't surrender it just because someone else doesn't believe in it, especially when their disbelief is rooted in jealousy, not insight. Look at Eleanor Roosevelt. She was constantly told what not to do, that she should speak less, stay quieter, not cause waves, but she ignored the noise. She followed her voice, and in doing so, she redefined what was possible for women in leadership. She didn't ask the crowd for permission. She listened to her conscience and moved forward. That's Stoic courage. Not loud, but consistent. Not flashy, but immovable. So how do you handle someone whose advice feels more like resistance than support? You stay polite, you stay calm, but you don't obey, you don't internalize, you don't change your course just to keep someone else comfortable. If the advice doesn't empower you, it's not wisdom, it's control. And control masked as care is still manipulation. Let people speak, let them doubt, let them whisper. But you stay grounded, stay focused, stay committed to your own standard. Because in the end, if the vision was given to you, it was meant to be protected by you. And that's how a Stoic walks forward. Without asking for permission and without explaining the path to those who were never meant to walk it.
Number 3.
They whisper what they won't say. There's a kind of jealousy that never looks you in the eye. It won't challenge you openly. It won't confront you directly. Instead, it hides in side comments, in backroom conversations, in private messages you'll never see. But that echo in how people start treating you. When someone envies you but lacks the courage to deal with it honestly, they don't approach you. They go around you. They start whispering. This is not just gossip. It's emotional warfare without fingerprints. The jealous person needs to chip away at your reputation, but they can't afford the risk of being seen as malicious, so they use implication instead of accusation. I just don't know if they're really that genuine. Something feels off about them. These are seeds of doubt, planted quietly, designed to grow in the minds of others. Their goal isn't to destroy you directly, it's to let suspicion do the work. The Stoics taught us to ignore insults, but not to ignore patterns. Marcus Aurelius warned, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." If someone chooses deception, do not match it with confrontation. If someone chooses to speak behind your back, let your actions speak louder than their whispers. A Stoic defends their peace by letting clarity, not retaliation, be their defense. But why does this tactic exist? Because confrontation requires risk, it requires vulnerability, it requires putting one's name beside one's opinion. But envy thrives in shadows. It feeds on vagueness, where no one is held accountable. The jealous person fears the consequences of direct conflict, so they try to damage your character indirectly. And it's more effective than you think, especially in social settings where reputation is currency. This is why Stoic thinkers emphasized internal grounding. Epictetus said, "If evil be spoken of you and it be true, correct yourself. If it be a lie, laugh at it." The truth is, most people don't laugh. They panic. They chase narratives. They try to manage every perception. But the Stoic way is different. You don't win by proving people wrong. You win by remaining unchanged in the face of misjudgment. You win by walking forward, unshaken. Think of Oprah Winfrey. Early in her career, she was ridiculed for being too emotional, too soft, too different. People didn't always say it to her face. But behind closed doors, producers and executives dismissed her. They whispered, they doubted, they laughed. But Oprah didn't retaliate. She built, she refined, she persisted, and she let her results become the rebuttal. She didn't just survive the whispers. She buried them under decades of undeniable contribution. And this is the essence of Stoic endurance. You do not engage every attack. You do not stoop to every rumor. You let people reveal themselves through their silence, through their slander, through their subtle sabotage. But you keep building, you keep working, you keep becoming. So when you sense that someone is speaking behind your back, don't react, observe. When your name leaves their mouth more than it should, don't confront, detach. Your reputation is not built in the mouths of others. It's built in your behavior, in your steadiness, in your self-control. Their words may spread, but they will not stick. Not if you remain disciplined in your response. Let their gossip die in the silence you give it. Let their speculation lose oxygen in the space you never give them. Let your progress drown out their pettiness. Because in the end, what they say in private reveals more about their character than yours. Let them whisper, let them speculate, and let your results rise so high, their words vanish under the weight of your presence. A Stoic doesn't fight rumors. A Stoic outlasts them with dignity, with detachment, and with the quiet power of truth.
Number 4.
They turn life into a race. There's a subtle form of jealousy that doesn't tear you down directly. It tries to outrun you. At first, it looks like admiration. They copy your habits. They start dressing like you. They begin quoting the same authors, pursuing the same goals, even speaking with similar cadence. But over time, it becomes clear. This isn't about inspiration, it's about competition. A quiet one, a secret scoreboard exists in their mind, and your every move becomes something they feel they have to match or outdo. To the Stoic, this is not just unwise, it's a distraction from one's own path, Marcus Aurelius wrote. Ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. Sanity means tying it to your own actions. When someone silently competes with you, they're no longer living their own life. They're living a reaction to yours. And nothing burns a person out faster than trying to win a race that only exists in their head. What makes this kind of jealousy especially dangerous is how well it hides. It often comes from friends, colleagues, people who say they're proud of you, but can't stop comparing themselves to you. You'll notice it when your progress becomes a trigger. When your good news is met not with celebration, but with their sudden need to one-up you, they mention how they have done something similar. They make sure to highlight their own accomplishments, often in the same breath as yours, not to share joy, but to stake their place. This isn't support, it's surveillance. The Stoic mind isn't concerned with appearances. It's concerned with alignment. Epictetus said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." The one who constantly compares is always in lack. They cannot enjoy what they have because their attention is chained to someone else's achievements. But the one who is anchored in virtue does not run against others. They walk with purpose. So the question becomes, do you want to win or do you want to be free? Because winning will feed your ego, but freedom will feed your spirit. Winning can be taken, but freedom, that's yours to keep. Look at Maya Angelou. She was never loud about being first. She didn't seek to outshine other poets, authors, or thinkers. She focused on being true to her voice, and in doing so, she became unforgettable. She didn't rush, she didn't chase, she created, and that's what made her powerful. Her mastery was rooted in presence, not performance. And that's what a Stoic seeks. Not applause, but authenticity. Not a finish line, but alignment. When others run, you stay grounded. When others compete, you reflect. When others rush to be seen, you work quietly in the background, knowing that peace isn't found in recognition, but in self-respect. It takes real strength to be consistent in a world addicted to competition. It takes restraint to walk your path without watching who's behind you or who's trying to pass you. But that's the Stoic difference. You are not here to win someone else's race. You are here to complete your own with honor. So what do you do when someone turns your life into a silent race? You don't run, you don't explain, you don't try to outdo, you walk, unshaken, steady, indifferent to the scoreboard. Let them chase trends, let them mimic your work, let them keep count. You don't need to win to feel worthy. You only need to keep walking your path with intention, with clarity, and with calm. Because in the end, those who are busy watching your pace are no longer focused on their own. And that's not progress. That's anxiety dressed up as ambition. The Stoic leaves the race, and in doing so, they win without running.
Number 5.
They center every moment on themselves. One of the quietest signs of jealousy is constant redirection. You share a success, and they spin it back to their story. You open up about a struggle, and somehow you're comforting them. These people are emotionally allergic to anyone else being in the spotlight for too long because your presence challenges their sense of importance. They can't let you have the moment. They always need to reclaim it. To the Stoic, this is a form of ego attachment, Marcus Aurelius reminds us. Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself. When someone constantly redirects the conversation to themselves, it's not confidence, it's insecurity. The need to dominate every interaction is rooted in a fear of being unseen. And when you start rising, when you begin owning your growth, they feel invisible. It's subtle at first. You mention something meaningful, and they immediately pivot. Oh, that reminds me of You share a painful experience, and they interrupt to describe a harder one. You're not having a conversation. You're watching a power play. They don't listen to understand. They listen for gaps to reinsert their narrative. This isn't just about attention. It's about control. They want to control how the room feels. They want to control how others see you. And most importantly, they want to control how valuable they appear by comparison. Your confidence becomes a mirror they didn't ask for. Your success becomes a background they feel lost in. The Stoics saw ego not as something to inflate, but something to overcome. That's why Epictetus said, "It is not he who reviles or strikes you who insults you, but your opinion that these things are insulting." In other words, the insult isn't what they say, it's whether you allow it to stick. A Stoic doesn't beg for recognition. A Stoic doesn't need to interrupt to matter. A Stoic listens with presence and speaks with precision. You see, when someone constantly centers the conversation on themselves, it's not because they're stronger, it's because they're afraid their silence will expose their irrelevance, and so they fill every pause with noise. But noise never equals value. The Stoics knew that silence, when grounded in purpose, speaks louder than all performance. Think about Toni Morrison. In a world where many sought to dominate with volume, she led with silence, precision, and presence. She didn't compete for attention. She commanded it by saying less and meaning more. She didn't need to redirect the room. The room recalibrated around her clarity. That's what power looks like when it's rooted in depth. So when someone constantly hijacks your moment, don't fight for it back. Let them have the microphone. Watch what they do with it. Observe. Because eventually people notice who listens and who just waits to speak. A Stoic doesn't raise their voice to be heard. They lower their need to be approved of. Let others chase the spotlight. Let them interrupt, overshare, overcompensate. You stay grounded, speak less, move deliberately, share when it's meaningful, not when it's strategic. And here's what happens next. The more you speak from silence, the more people lean in. The more you detach from recognition, the more powerful your presence becomes. Because in the end, the loudest voice is not the most powerful one. The clearest one is. A Stoic doesn't demand attention. They embody it, not through volume, but through value, not through dominance, but through depth. When the world is shouting, silence becomes magnetic, and the one who can hold that silence with ease is the one who has nothing to prove and everything to offer. That's the kind of presence no jealousy can interrupt, no noise can replace, and no ego can overshadow. Number 6, they shrink your wins. Jealousy doesn't always show up as sabotage. Sometimes it arrives dressed as logic. You share a win, and instead of celebration, you get minimization. That's not that impressive. It was probably just luck. Anyone could have done that. These comments are rarely said with malice. They're said with restraint, with that subtle tone that says, "You're not as great as you think you are." But the goal is always the same, to shrink your confidence down to something they can tolerate. To the Stoic, this is the mind's battlefield. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change, for I seek the truth. But if they are just trying to put me down, I must be deaf to their words." In other words, truth should sharpen you, but envy should never shrink you. A Stoic discerns not just what is said, but why it's being said. Minimization is a quiet act of resistance. It often comes from those close to you, people who saw you before you became who you are now. They liked you when you were unsure, when you were trying, when you needed their approval. But now that you've found stability, now that you walk with calm and certainty, they don't know how to respond. So they poke holes, not in your results, but in your belief. They don't attack the facts. They undermine the feeling behind the facts. This is dangerous because if you're not aware, you'll start questioning yourself in moments when you should be celebrating. You'll start doubting what you've clearly earned. You'll start shrinking, not because you failed, but because someone made you feel like success needs an apology. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. Epictetus said, "Know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly." Meaning, own what you've built, wear your progress without shame. Here's the truth. People who haven't done the inner work will always struggle to applaud those who have. When you grow, you disturb their comfort. When you elevate, you expose their stagnation. And rather than face that discomfort, they try to downplay your ascent. It's not about you, it's about what your progress triggers in them. Consider Serena Williams. At the height of her excellence, she wasn't just challenged, she was minimized. Her strength was questioned, her victories were called luck, her dominance was reframed as arrogance. But Serena didn't argue. She trained, she evolved, she won again. And in doing so, she demonstrated what Stoics already know, that excellence doesn't need validation. It just needs repetition. The Stoic path is not about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. It's about trusting the process, not the praise. So how does a Stoic handle the person who keeps shrinking their wins? You don't shrink with them. You don't seek their praise. You detach from the performance of being liked, and you stay anchored in the internal joy that comes from doing what you once thought you couldn't. You don't have to prove anything. You just have to continue. Let them call it luck. Let them call it timing. Let them call it anything but what it truly is. Earned. You already know the truth, and the truth repeated through quiet action always outlives small opinions. So you keep rising, you keep building, you keep moving forward. Not for applause, not for permission, but because your path demands it. A Stoic celebrates without needing applause, and when the crowd goes silent, they keep walking anyway. That's not pride, it's peace, and it's a peace that cannot be shrunk. And that kind of peace doesn't just protect your progress, it amplifies it. Number 7, they make success feel wrong. Perhaps the most manipulative form of jealousy is guilt. This is when someone doesn't just downplay your success, they make you feel bad for having it. They say things like, "You've changed," or "You're lucky you don't have my problems," or they simply go silent as if your progress is somehow an offense. It's not that you've done something wrong, it's that your light is too bright for their comfort. To the Stoic, this is the kind of moment that tests your clarity, Seneca once wrote. "What progress have I made? I have begun to be a friend to myself." In other words, growth is not about being celebrated, it's about being at peace with who you are becoming. And part of that peace is learning to stand firm when others try to guilt you back into playing small. Guilt is powerful. It works not through argument, but through silence, through sighs, through withdrawal. It makes you question not just what you've done, but who you are. And when someone uses guilt as a reaction to your growth, it's usually because your improvement is highlighting their inertia. You've moved forward, they've stayed still, and rather than reflect, they resent. But a Stoic does not apologize for growth. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one." This is the antidote to guilt. Clarity. When you are clear on your values, clear on your efforts, and clear on your purpose, then other people's reactions, whether cold, distant, or passive-aggressive, lose their power. Consider Oprah Winfrey. She rose from poverty to global influence. And with every new level of success, she encountered not just critics, but people who tried to shame her into silence. Don't get too big. Don't forget where you came from. But Oprah didn't fold. She leaned into purpose. She expanded. She gave more. She taught more. She didn't let guilt shrink her presence. She let vision expand her impact. You see, guilt is a tool people use when they can no longer control you through praise or criticism. It's the emotional residue left behind when others feel they're losing access to the version of you they preferred, usually the smaller, quieter, more dependent one. But your growth is not betrayal. Your transformation is not abandonment. It's alignment. And the Stoic knows that alignment with virtue sometimes means misalignment with others' comfort. You do not grow to provoke, you grow to fulfill your nature. Just as the tree doesn't apologize to the shadow it casts, you don't have to apologize for standing in your truth. Epictetus would say, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. You don't owe an emotional explanation to those who choose discomfort over discipline. And here's the truth. If your light offends someone, they were never seeing you. They were seeing their own insecurities reflected in you. The more you grow, the more they shrink, because they haven't chosen to do the inner work. But that's their path, not yours. So walk with quiet strength. Let your life be the response. Let your actions remind them that it's possible. Let your stillness reveal what their noise hides. And most of all, never feel guilty for evolving. You were not meant to stay in the version of yourself that made others feel in control. You were meant to become who you truly are, and the Stoic walks that path without needing applause or approval. Because growth, when aligned with virtue, becomes unshakable. And that is the kind of power no guilt can reach. And once you've tasted that kind of peace, you'll never feel guilty for choosing it again. Now you see it. Jealousy doesn't always look like hate. Sometimes it hides in silence, in subtle jabs, in the quiet moments where people pull away, not because you've wronged them, but because you've grown without needing them. The Stoic path is not about exposing others. It's about revealing yourself, clearly, calmly, and without apology. You don't need to fight jealousy, you just need to outlast it through discipline, through stillness, through alignment with what matters most. Let others compete, compare, and criticize you. You continue, and in your quiet continuation, you become untouchable. If this video spoke to you, if you've felt this kind of resistance from people you love, know this: you're not alone. You're just evolving, and evolution often threatens what refuses to move. Like, subscribe. Share this with someone who needs it, and above all, stay rooted in your peace. The Stoic does not rise by being louder, they rise by being clear.